Guys, my name is Michael and welcome to a new tutorial. Today we are going to talk about properties again, and we are going to talk about new functions and new things which we can provide for, or which are provided for us and for application. And today we are going to see what exactly is the story with GObjectSet and GObjectGetProperties. And of course we are going to talk just a little bit about Gvalues and parameters as well. Anyway, we are not going to go into much details, but I really need to find a way to exactly show you how it's working, how works the story of the set property and get property function. Okay, for this let us go back. What did we learn until now? We learned that we can get the property. We can find a property if there is. Once that we have it, we saw that we can get its default value of the property, like in this case the relief property has the GTK relief normal as its default. We were setting it here through GObjectSet to GTK relief none, and once that we call the GObjectSet property, we basically reset this property to its default value. And for this, of course, we need to take care about the last parameter of the GObjectSet property, because as you already know, the GObjectSet property takes three parameters. The first one is the object, the second one is the property name, in this case is the relief, and the last one is the value, and the value, it should be a value of a Gvalue type, which is very important. Okay, now what's the story with this Gvalue and how we can work without getting this value? How about if you want to set a value to a property other than the default one? This is basically the goal of this tutorial. So I'm going to remove all these things right here because we don't need them. Basically now if I compile it and run it, we have only the button itself, nothing special, as you can see. And we are going to see what's the story with these G values. Basically these functions, what we have here, this is a macro which initiates our variable, and then we have a function which is also called Gvalue init, but this time in lowercase. And what does this function? Basically it's here actually happens the initialization of the function of the variable, because here you say what kind of type should use this function. Should be int, should be a string, should be a char, float, and so on. And then of course we are going to work with some functions, and then later we are going to clear this we're going to clear the variable so that we can use it for another data type. Basically, like I already told you in the last tutorial, Gvalue means that you can use any kind of data type you want to. So for example, it's like you are declaring int, char, float, is something like this. Okay, those which you are coming from other language, you already know that you don't need to declare a variable. You just put a name, and based on what you put inside that name, it will be interpreted as a data type for your application. But this is another story, but anyway it is something similar. So how the program flow works? Well, we are going basically to declare a variable, and then later we are going, after we declare, we are going to initiate the variable. Later we are going, after we initiate, we are going to set the data type which use the variable, for example int, float, char, string, and so on. This is where we are going to decide, and then the last thing, we are going to put some value in that variable, and last one, we are going to use the variable as well. So how the program flow works, we need, first thing first, we need to declare a variable. The variable which we are going to declare is Gvalue, and if we go here, it says generate value, a polymorphic type that can hold values of any other type. So the thing which I was telling you. Anyway, like I said, we are not going to make too much theory. The thing which we need to declare it. So basically Gvalue, and then the value itself. And now we are going to initialize it, and we are going to say value, and we are going to point it to this macro, which we are going to see in a second what exactly is the story with it. So let us go to its documentation, and says the macro Gvalue init, a Gvalue must be initialized before it can be used. So this macro can be used as initializer instead of an explicit 0 right here when declaring a variable, but it cannot be assigned to a variable. This is very important. What exactly means this part, we will see in a moment. So basically Gvalue value, and as you can see, it does the same things, Gvalue init. Okay, the next thing which we are going to, let me clean a bit here. Okay, the next thing which we need, it is to set the data type. For this, there is a function which has the same name like the macro, but in lowercase, and it is a function. It is called Gvalue init. So let us check this one right now, what exactly it means. And we are going to find it again in the generic values right here, and says initialize a value with a default value of type. So basically here, what that means, says takes the first parameter, which is the 0 filled uninitialized Gvalue. This is what we did here. We filled it with zeros, but we didn't initialize it. This is what we are going to use now. We are initializing the value. Okay, this is what we did. So this is the first parameter, and the second is the G type. Well, the G type, which expects here, maybe you are thinking that you are going to use G type value. Like for example, a good thing will be possible if you get the value of property, and then you get the type of that value of that property, like we did in the last videos, and with the help of that type of the value, you can create a new value. Yes, it's true. This is basically what does, but no. Now we are going to do something else. We are create a value for ourselves, not from another type of the value which already which we already have it. So basically we are going to call this function Gvalue init, and the first one will be the value. As you can see, it needs a pointer, so we are going to pass its address of the value, and the second one is the G type. So what we are going to use here, we are going to create an int type. If we go back to types and values, which we find them, where are they? Those I went too much. Wait a second. Okay, it's too much to look. G type int. Type information, yes. So if we go all the way down here, then as you can see, we have those macros for int, long, enumeration, flags, float, double, string, pointer, and so on. So basically, this is what we are going to use now. We are going to use G type int right here, which says the fundamental type will correspond to int. What exactly means, I'm going to explain in a second. Let me show you something. If, for example, you say int value, then this function does this thing right now. After you call this function right here, it is the same like you created an integer int value or whatever int. This is the thing which we did right now. We create a variable of a type int. Okay, that's the thing. Now the next thing which we are going to use with it is putting a variable inside, some value in that variable. It's something like you say value and then you put 50 inside when after you declare it to int value or whatever. So basically this is what we do right now. We are going to put a value inside that variable, and for this we need a function which is called Gvalue set int. Let me call it for you. Gvalue set int, which of course this value it is found inside of the parameter and values. You see parameter and values right here. Right here you can search for it, Gvalue set int, and says sets the content of the G type Gvalue to vint. So basically we are creating it. So I'm going to call this one right now, right here, and the first one is our value. Again, we need a pointer, so we are going to pass its address, and the second one which we are going to use, it is a value. So like I said, let me pass 50. Now we can use the variable. For example, of course, if you say gprint the value is wherever, you already know that it's not gonna work if you work like this. Why it's not working? I'm going to show in a moment. Gvalue expect expression before. Yes, of course. this is a strange wording, but if you paid attention at the beginning of the tutorial, I was reading you. Let me go back to Gvalue init. You see this part right here, but it cannot be assigned to a variable. You remember when I tell? Let me read again. A Gvalue must be initialized before it can be used. So it has to be initialized before use. So basically, we didn't use it, but we did initialize it right here. It's very important. Okay, so this macro can be used as initializer instead of an explicit 0 right here. So when declaring a variable, but it cannot be assigned to a variable. So this is quite complicated. Let me see what exactly says here. A G value must be added before it can be used. This macro can be used. Okay, so it's the same story. So what exactly this means? It means that we need to drop this part right here and move it here. You see? So this means declare and initialize the variable. This is what we need to make it work. If you do this, it works fine. If you don't, then you have a problem. So basically you need to declare and initialize at the same time. I'm going to write it right here. So declare and initialize the variable at the same time. So basically to make it work, you need to declare right now. If you decide later to assign it to the value like I did before, it's not working and you get that error. Now I'm going to compile it and run it. And of course says the format is wrong because it is expecting of type int, but we are passing a Gvalue. So of course this means we need to get the Gvalue set get int instead of that. So Gvalue get int, and of course the value, as you can see, it says it needs a pointer again. So basically if we are passing only the value right now, it will be different kind of values. Why? Because one is a constant and one is not. So watch, we didn't set const Gvalue here, but the function itself says incompatible type for argument 1 of Gvalue getInt, expecting a const, and we are done passing it. So to save us, we just need to use it as a pointer. So just pass its address like me right here, right now, and now you will see that works fine. You see, now the value is 50. Now because we have this value, we can play with this. So G object set property. So the first one, it is, you already know, it is the G object we already saw in the last tutorial, which is the button. The second is the property. We are going to use the margin this time, and the last one will be the value. So we don't know what the value it is right now, but we know that we create a value which we then decide to be a type of int, and we put a value of 50 inside it, and now we are going to use this value for our button by setting the margin property to it. Let me see if it's working. I'm going to compile it and run it. And Houston, we have running type for argument 3 to GTK property. So it needs a constant value. The same story again with a constant when we actually need. So I'm going to pass its address right now. The same story, and this works fine and should be our button. You see this tiny little button right here? It is because we decide to use a margin of 50. Of course, if I'm going to use 100, it will be very small button, but you know how it works. You see? Now, basically, this is the way how we work with those things. Now, if we need to make some changes, for example, if we need to change it or to create another variable, so we will do like this. Basically, we initialize the variable, and then we declare and initiate it, and then we set the data type which use the variable. In this case, we are going to use a string instead of an int. And now instead of a set int, there is another function which is called Gvalue set string right here. Let me call it for you. And says sets the content of the G type string Gvalue to a V string. So basically it is a string which we are going to set. So I'm going to call this function, and instead of 100 I'm going to set this time quit. And now that we have the set it to quit, basically we need to get a string now instead of int, and of course we are set the label this time to the value. Let's see what happens. Okay, we have the wrong argument here for our, and as you can see now it says quit. It doesn't say click like it was when we created before. Let me comment it for a second just to show you that I'm right. So basically we were creating a button with a new label, call it click. You see it is click, and once that we declare and inside the value we put we set its type to be a string, and then we put a value inside which is quit, and then we set the label of the button to be set to the new value which is quit instead of click. So basically this is the way how you work with these things. You see, it works fine. Okay, that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.